Hey everybody, I'm Theo, and I've been your team leader this year at Intervarsity at NAU, and I get to introduce our speaker tonight. But my time here at team leader, it's been really good, and team leader is kind of a special position where you get a front row seat to what God is doing in the community. And something I've noticed consistently this year is that God has been doing something more with Intervarsity at NAU. And so Chris, when he came to college, he wasn't a Christian, and God had more in store for his life than he ever thought. And so his freshman year, he met Jesus in a small group through Intervarsity and started to follow him. And so he began to experience this more that God had for him in his life. And it didn't stop there. At the end of Chris's time in college, he received a call to ministry. God had more for him than just a career in business. And so he's been an intern here this past year at this community where he became a Christian. I think God's been doing more with us individually here as well. A lot of you guys came to college, thinking that you were going to be a student here at NAU, that you were going to get an education. And that's happening, but God has more for you. And I think He's shown many of us in this room that He wants us to be missionaries to this campus, that He wants us to take Jesus to places where the gospel is not known. And this week is Vision Week, and a lot of you guys are even right now kind of receiving like a call to something more from Jesus. You're being challenged to be a leader in this chapter. And I think God has been doing a lot in this community this year, a lot more than we ever thought. We've planted 6 new small groups in areas of campus that don't have Jesus, that don't know the gospel. We've been sending people on trips during winter break to Fresno. We're sending some of our students to be missionaries in China. We're sending some of our students on summer projects. You guys, this community is sending me and my wife Crystal to plant an Intervarsity chapter at Arizona State University in Tempe. God is doing more on this campus with this community. And because God is doing more, I'm here to announce tonight that Chris Huston is going to be the new team leader for this community here at NAU. So, God has even more in store for this chapter, for this fellowship than any of us here think. And Chris is going to be the one who is going to be leading you into that in the future next year. So I'm going to pray for him, and then he's going to speak to us tonight.
All right, well, I was going to introduce myself, but Theo did a pretty good job of doing that. I think he actually kind of just gave my whole talk in a few sentences, so we could probably all just go home. But, I spent a lot of time writing it, so I'm going to go ahead and actually give it. But anyway, I know most of you guys here in the room, so that's why it was good to have Theo introduce me for anyone who you guys don't know. I've been interning all year, like Theo said, and I got to lead lots of you at Mark II, which was awesome. And I've also given 2 talks at Intervarsity before, so if you guys need a refresher, I was the guy that said that Jeff Gentry looks like an older version of Justin Bieber. That was me. I came up with that. So, anyway, now that you guys kind of remember, because Theo just told you guys that I'm going to be on your guys' staff team, there'll be plenty more funny pictures from me in the future. So I mentioned that I've given 2 talks already with Intervarsity. And in my first talk, I introduced my beautiful wife, Elise. I'm married. And I showed some pictures from our wedding, both real and some funny pictures. And I don't have time to show them tonight, but they're on Facebook if you really want to see them. And then for my second talk, I introduced my family. I told some stories and I showed some pictures of my dad with a weird beard and my brothers. So for tonight, I decided to start off with an introduction of myself. Because I'm going to be sticking around for a few years, I want to get to know more of you guys. I want you guys to know a few things about me. So I picked 3 specific things, and I think these are really important. So if you got a pen and paper, you should take some notes. And if not, just follow along on the screen, okay? So the first one, I'm not married. not mad at you, it just looks like I am. So, in the past, there's been some teasing that the word that best describes me is stoic, okay? But, I am here to clear the air, okay? That's my normal face. That's just what I love. Okay? That is the face that our good Creator has blessed me with. So if you guys see me and I'm like making that face and you think I'm mad, chances are I'm probably not. I'm usually in a good mood and I'm probably having fun and ready to be silly. So that's the first thing you should know about me. The second thing you should know about me is that I'm an ESTJ, Myers-Briggs personality type. So if you guys have spent any amount of time with Intervarsity staff or interns, I'm sure you've heard us talk about the Myers-Briggs Personality Index. It's this helpful tool that lets you kind of understand who you are and who you naturally communicate and work well with, which is why we talk about it so much. So for anyone who knows what that means, I'm an ESTJ. So a quick note, does anyone in the room, raise your hand if you know you're an ESTJ? Perfect, that's kind of what I expected actually. But just so you guys know, ESTJ is actually the most common personality type in the entire United States, making up almost 15% of the population. Apparently, it's not very common in churches or universities. So. But it's good. It's good that I'm, the one to represent them all. So, but because I don't have enough time to explain exactly what an ESTJ means, I figured I would just show you guys some pictures of some famous ESTJs, so you guys would have an idea of people that would get me. So, first one. Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil is an ESTJ. We also have Michelle Obama, Bill O'Reilly, Condoleezza Rice, Judge Judy, Paul the Apostle, General Grievous from Star Wars, Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face, Regina George, and my personal favorite, Grumpy the Dwarf. So I think these pictures give some insight into my last point about being stoic. It was really easy to find angry-looking pictures of these people. So I think the stoicism is just like an ESTJ thing. But being that I'm an ESTJ, it also means that I'm surrounded by people who I don't really easily communicate with. So two of my fellow interns are INFPs, which is the complete opposite of me. And an ESTJ's enigma, which is the person who you don't really naturally communicate with, is an ENFJ. And my roommate and fellow staff worker next year, Brittany Shelton, is an ENFJ. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But anyway, another thing that you guys should know about me is that I really like audience participation. So if I say something cool during my talk, feel free to shout like amen, or if you went to that conference last semester, you'd be like, come on! When I was a sophomore, I went to this spring break trip to St. Louis, and that trip completely changed my life. And not the same way that I would say Reese's Peanut Butter Cups changed my life. This is a legitimate changed my life. And while I was there, I got to learn lots about different cultural traits. And on Sunday, we went to a church there that was very culturally diverse. And everyone responds really vocally. And I thought it was so cool. It felt like the congregation really had this awesome sense of being a family. And it's also really encouraging to the speaker. So it's something that I really like. And so I figured we'd give it a try. So let's try this. Jesus is the Son of God. I had in my notes that if people didn't participate, I was going to say something funny, but you guys did great, so just do that. I hope there's more opportunities during my talk for you guys to do that. Okay. So, with those three things, you guys should pretty much all be experts on my life. But actually, those are all just really silly things, and because I do want to get to know you guys, I actually do want to tell you something about my life that's really serious. So, like Theo said, I became a Christian freshman year here at NAU during college. And I want to tell you guys a little bit about what that experience was like for me. So I don't have time to tell you my whole testimony, but because I'm going to be around for a little while, feel free to come ask me for more details if you're curious at some point. So when I was a senior in high school, I wasn't a Christian, and I had this really awful attitude towards God. And because of it, I felt really distant from Him. I felt really unwelcome in churches. I felt like I had this problem that only God could heal. And It took me a while to really open up to see who God was. But when I came to college, I really wanted to investigate who God and who Jesus was. And I started to see him. I started to see Jesus in the lives of others. But it still felt distant. It still felt like I was peeking over this fence to see him, or looking at him through the cracks. Eventually I got involved in an InterVarsity small group, and I started to see Jesus closer. But for some reason it felt like he was walking by me. And I was at this point in my life where if I didn't get his attention now, I might never. So I shouted out to him, "Jesus, have pity on me and heal me." And it was as if he looked at me. I had finally got his attention, and he spoke to me. He said, "Confess with your mouth and believe with your heart that Jesus is Lord. Go and praise him." So I did. I told my small group leader, Brian's son, and in the fourth floor game room of Seacrest Hall, I prayed and became a Christian that night. And I won't lie to you guys, it was awesome. I called my girlfriend, she's now my wife Elise, but we sat and talked in the lobby for hours. I called my friends and family and told them my news. I finally felt welcome in churches. I really liked this community and hanging out. I thought Christians were cool, and best of all, I felt like I was healed. I felt like everything in my past, especially this awful attitude I had towards God, was gone. And I loved this new life. But as this new life went on, I forgot that it was Jesus who had done that. I forgot that it was God who I had encountered. I was so obsessed with this new life that I didn't have time for Jesus anymore. I'm going to read you guys a story tonight from Luke chapter 17. In this story, Jesus meets some lepers, some of whom were like me. It's really short, so I want to invite you guys just to close your eyes and listen. But if you really prefer, it will be on the screen too. Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." In this passage, Jesus did something awesome for 10 people, and yet only one returned to him. Only one praised him, only one served him, and only one threw himself before him. And Jesus asked the question, where are the other 9? When I was a freshman, I was like one of the 9. I was presented with a choice, and I chose against Jesus. See, Jesus had healed me, and I loved it. I loved the new life, but I wasn't ready to serve him, and I wasn't willing to give up my entire college experience to do so. I found myself saying, "Sorry, Jesus, I don't have time to return to you. I don't have time to give you praise or to serve you. I have too many classes, too many activities, too many new friends." On Monday, we kicked off Vision Week. The purpose of Vision Week is to restore our vision for this campus. It's a time where we can live out what we say. And I want to tell you guys that I've been really impressed with how you guys have been stepping up. At the prayer event, we grew in our confidence praying and learned about praying without ceasing. At the service event, we shared a meal and served an ostracized population of our community. And yesterday, we got to hang out and have fun, share the gospel, and talk to our campus about their cultural identity. And I know you guys are all going to come and participate and really step up for the LaFay event too. Yeah. See? You guys have been engaging your campus, and because of that, God's been showing up. God has been encountering new students and people in our community because we have been choosing to respond to him. And another large part of Vision Week is leadership. It's a time where we as leaders in this chapter live out the values of our chapter, where we see the advancement of the kingdom of God and invite others to have a part in it. And tonight my talk is about leadership. Now there are plenty of passages that I could use in Scripture to give a talk on leadership. There are passages that describe the traits of a good leader. There are passages that exemplify what it looks like to lead well. But I didn't choose any of those passages because InterVarsity doesn't need any more leaders. We need more servants. You can say amen. Amen. Jesus served his disciples. He got on his knees and washed their feet, among other things. We need more who are willing to serve. we need more to be like the one in this passage. So let's take a closer look at the one. It's a pretty cool picture. We're talking about the one leper, though. So the one leper encountered God. God in the flesh, who is Jesus, walked by this man. And the leper was healed by God. He was changed physically and I'm sure emotionally. And then the one returned to Jesus. He sacrificed his time, his relationships, and his priorities to do so. Now this passage isn't clear, but I imagine that this leper suffered from his disease for a long time. I'm sure that he felt abandoned and ostracized for a while. And I'm really sure he was excited to start his new life without leprosy. But he still put that on hold to be with Jesus. He also praised Jesus. Then he threw himself at his feet as an act of service, gratitude, and submission. Now, bowing before someone isn't a typical way to thank someone in our culture or theirs. People would bow before a king or a ruler. And this leper is showing that he's submitting to Jesus' lordship by getting on his knees before him. And he doesn't just bow. It says that he throws himself at Jesus' feet. He assumes an absolute posture of humility and servanthood. But what's really interesting is that he doesn't stay there. He rises and he goes when Jesus tells him to. He was willing to be sent. He wasn't going to tell Jesus that he would serve him. He was going to live that out. He wasn't looking for a job when he returned to Jesus, but when he got one, he got up and obeyed. And finally, Jesus tells this one that he has faith and that it's his faith that healed him. So, that's things about the one, and that's the list that I want for the future leaders of this chapter. Someone who has encountered God, been changed by him, returns to him, praises him, serves him, has faith, and is willing to be sent. If you notice, this list doesn't say, has all the right answers, has read their entire Bible, doesn't struggle with anything, has lots of leadership experience, or is really comfortable speaking in public. God isn't concerned with those things. God isn't concerned with a resume. He's concerned with you. If you're a Christian in this room, God has done something for you. If anything, it's your salvation. But maybe it's the relationship that Jesus has helped you reconcile, or the sin that you've been set free of. Perhaps it's the way that you encountered God through his word at Mark Camp. God has encountered and changed all of us in this room, and everyone in this room is equipped to be like the one. You have everything you already need. The question is, will you respond? Will you choose to be like the one? Because being the one is hard. And I think that there are 3 key reasons why being the one is hard. First off, returning to Jesus is hard. 90% of your peers may not be like you. Friends and family may not understand your decision to return to Jesus. And returning to Jesus takes time and sacrifice. Consider that we live in a very fast-paced society. Today, your cell phone is out of date by the time you figure out how to work it. It's funny, but it's true. We live in an era where Google can literally return trillions of searches in milliseconds. That's a screenshot from a real Google search that I did. We live in a culture that's about skipping grades and graduating early and starting your career as fast as possible. We live in a world that tells us if we take the time to return to Jesus, we will fall behind. We are not taught to be like the one. We are taught to be first. And Jesus says in the kingdom of heaven, the last shall be first. The second reason I think it's hard is that we have to be humble and throw ourselves at Jesus' feet. We have to assume the posture that the leper had, a posture of submission to God. We have to learn to be a servant and put people ahead of us instead of behind us. We have to bow before Jesus' authority, which can be hard. It still is for me sometimes. We also have to go, which I think is the third reason why being the one is hard. Not only do we have to take on this servant posture that I was just describing, but we have to go. Wanting to serve Jesus and stay at his feet can be tempting because we'll always be with him. But when he asks us to rise and go, it can be really hard to obey. We can be really tempted to want to stay in that safe and quiet place. We can make excuses that we weren't looking for a job when we return to him. But we have to be willing to be sent if we want to be like the one. And when we're sent, we have to go. Being a leader in Intervarsity is a serious commitment. It requires a lot, and you may have to sacrifice personal and or school time to do it. But what if everyone in this room agreed to say no to the world that lies to us about being first? What if we said yes to following Jesus no matter what the cost was for at least 1 year? 1 year out of your whole life is really small. But I guarantee you that the impact you could have on this campus, or this community, or even one person's life is massive. What if we said yes as a community to be willing to be sent to impact the campus of NAU? What could happen to this place? What if being like the one leper became the norm? I want to see what that would be like. I want to see a different story where 9 lepers stay and only 1 is too busy. I want to see you guys choose to be like the one in this passage and to embody these characteristics. See, in my story, I eventually decided to be like the one. I decided to put what my friends thought of me, my dreams, my college degree, and even my career behind me to serve Jesus as a praise for the way that he healed me. At the start of my talk, I told you guys about my spring break trip to St. Louis that changed my life. But at first, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to pay. I really didn't want to give up my spring break. And I didn't want to have a cross-cultural experience. But I had faith, and I chose to be like the one. I chose to serve Jesus even if it meant sacrifice. And I chose to be sent. And St. Louis was amazing. It was absolutely life-changing. I went to St. Louis as a student who didn't want to fully follow Jesus, and now Theo just announced that I'm going to be the team leader of this NAU University chapter, working full-time in ministry, and it's because I made a choice to follow Jesus. And I've been choosing to be like the one ever since. St. Louis was that moment for me, where I chose to be like the one. Tonight may be that moment for you, where you will choose to be like the one. So like I said before, the question is, will you choose to be like the one? Tonight I'm going to give you an opportunity to do just that. A representative from each one of the Intervarsity ministry teams that make up our leadership is here. And I want to invite you guys to rise and go. Just like Jesus says to that leper, I want you to hear the same message. I want you to get up, get out of your seat, and go and meet some of these ministry team leaders. They'll tell you what their ministry team does and answer any questions that you guys might have. I also want you to put yourself in the posture of being a good servant leader. Just like the leper, maybe you weren't looking for a job or a leadership position when you came tonight. But I want you to assume this position of submission to God and be listening to what he might be calling you into tonight. If that's the case, I want you to be willing to be sent. And if you decide that you want to serve Jesus through leadership and be sent to the campus at NAU, I want you to sign a commitment statement with the ministry team leader. It's just a piece of paper that says, I choose to be like the one. And it tells our ministry team leaders that you'll be filling out a leadership application and they can contact you regarding leadership selection in a few weeks. So you guys are going to have 10 minutes to do this, and after that we're going to come back together for some closing announcements and worship. So go ahead right now. Okay guys, so I want to thank you guys for taking that time seriously. And I want to let you guys know if you guys didn't choose to go and sign that commitment statement tonight, or if you want more information, just real quick, our 8 ministry teams, our worship team, events team, service team, large group team, prayer team, ISM, which is International Student Ministry, and LaFay, Latino Fellowship, or being a small group. So this was not your only opportunity to get involved. You guys can always come up and talk to me or any of the staff or any of the ministry team leaders after tonight and get some more information if you need that. Also, part of this process is filling out a leadership application, which will be posted to the NAU Facebook group. So if you guys are not a part of that group, you should, I don't know, it's called follow. You should follow the NAU University. You should like the NAU University if you're still interested. So anyway, I want to give you guys, now that we're back together, one more challenge. I want to encourage you guys to praise like the one in this passage. It said in the passage that he praised in a loud voice. So for this last few minutes, I invited the worship team to come up because I wanted you guys to just see them while I was talking about them. You guys, we're really, really spoiled. Our worship team is awesome. These guys lead us into an encounter with God every week. They lead us in like new styles of worship. They lead us in new languages of worship. And yeah, I really want you guys to benefit from this encounter with God that they lead us into. And so, like, look around. This room is huge, right? We're only, like, taking up half this room. But I want to challenge you guys tonight to praise in a loud voice, and I want to fill this room with sound. I want to fill it with worship for a holy God who sends us and who heals us. So dance, sing, put your hands up, spread out, move around the room. Do whatever you got to do to get comfortable. Do whatever you got to do to encounter God. Because I really just want to tonight give Jesus praise for the King that He is.